Welcome to the Facilitators Deep Dive Podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery.
Okay, so imagine you're totally stuck on this problem, right? Maybe it's at work, maybe it's in your personal life, whatever. You've talked it to death, you've brainstormed every angle, but the solution it's nowhere to be found.
You hit a wall.
Exactly. And it's frustrating, right? But what if the answer isn't buried in more words? What if it's in something completely different?
Like visuals.
Exactly. And that brings us to today's deep dive, drawing together. You sent over some fascinating info on this, and honestly, I'm really intrigued.
Yeah, it's a really cool technique.
So for those of us who haven't stumbled across this gem yet, can you give us the quick rundown on what exactly drawing together is and where it comes from?
Well, drawing together is all about tapping into hidden knowledge. You know, those feelings and attitudes and patterns that are kind of hard to put into words.
The stuff we don't even realize is influencing us.
Precisely, and it's especially useful when you're mentally exhausted or, just stuck in that logical thinking rut.
Oh yeah, I've been there.
So instead of forcing ourselves to come up with more words, more explanations, drawing together kind of gives our left brains a break and lets our right brains take the wheel.
Okay, so we're talking about tapping into that creative, intuitive side of our brains.
Exactly. And it comes from the world of liberating structures, which is all about breaking free from conventional ways of working and thinking, shaking things up a bit.
I like that, shaking things up. So how does the shaking up actually happen? Are we talking about, full on painting murals or something?
Oh, no, not at all. Actually, drawing together uses a super simple visual language, just 5 basic symbols.
5 symbols, that's it.
Yep, that's all you need.
I'm already curious, how can 5 symbols unlock all this hidden knowledge?
Well, let me break it down for you. So you've got a circle for wholeness, a rectangle for support, a triangle for goals, a spiral for change, and then they call it a star person to represent relationships.
Okay, I can picture those pretty simple shapes. Anyone can draw those.
Exactly. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you're Picasso or you can barely draw a stick figure. These symbols are so basic, anyone can use them.
Okay, I'm getting a sense of the simplicity here, but walk me through how a typical drawing together session might play out.
Okay, so picture this. You're in a room with your team or, any group of people who are all grappling with the same challenge or opportunity.
Yeah, we're all in this together.
Exactly. Everyone learns these 5 symbols.
Yeah.
Gets familiar with them. And then individually, you each create 2 drawings.
Good drawing. Okay.
Yeah, the first one is like a rough draft, a quick sketch using only those symbols, no words allowed.
Whoa, hold on, no words. So we're forced to translate our thoughts and feelings into this visual language.
Exactly. That's where the magic starts to happen.
I can see how that would force you to think differently, to really consider what each symbol represents.
Right. You start to notice connections, patterns, things you might not have even consciously acknowledged before.
Interesting. Okay, so we've got our first draft down. What about the second drawing?
So for the second drawing, you get to refine your visual story. You can play around with the size placement and color of the symbols, add layers of nuance and emphasis.
Okay, so if the circle represents the problem, maybe I make it huge in the second drawing to show how overwhelming it feels.
Exactly. Or maybe you add a bunch of tiny rectangles around it to show, a lack of support.
Okay, so we've all got our 2 drawings. Now what? Do we all stand up and present our masterpieces or something?
Not quite. That's where it gets even more interesting. You break into smaller groups and you share your drawings, but here's the catch. The artist stays silent.
Ooh, so it's we're all art critics, but instead of judging the technique, we're deciphering the meaning.
Exactly. And that's where those real aha moments start to pop up. Because as viewers, we bring our own perspectives and interpretations to the drawings, and we might see things that the artist hadn't even considered.
Okay, so what if my interpretation of someone's drawing is totally off base?
That's totally fine. Remember, there's no right or wrong answer here. It's all about exploring those different perspectives. And for the artist, it can be incredibly valuable to hear how others are seeing their challenge. It might reveal some blind spots or biases they hadn't even realized.
Okay, yeah, I can see how that would be helpful, a whole new way of looking at the problem.
Exactly. So you've got those individual insights happening in the small groups, but then everyone comes back together for a larger conversation, and you start to see patterns emerge across all the different drawings.
So it's not just about individual aha moments, but about identifying collective themes and patterns.
Exactly. Maybe everyone is using a lot of spirals, which could indicate, shared feeling of being stuck. Or maybe someone's drawing is dominated by a giant rectangle, suggesting a need for more support or structure.
Okay, so we're getting a sense of the group dynamics and how drawing together can help uncover those shared experiences and challenges.
Right. And what's fascinating is that these insights are often more nuanced and insightful than what you'd get from a traditional brainstorming session, where people are just throwing out words and ideas.
Yeah, I can see how the act of drawing would force you to think more deeply about the issue and really engage with it on a different level.
Exactly. And remember, this technique comes from the world of liberating structures,
Hmm.
which is all about, finding new ways to work together more effectively.
Right, you mentioned that earlier. So for those of us who aren't familiar with liberating structures, can you give us a little more background?
Sure. So liberating structures is basically a collection of 33 microstructures designed to create more engaging, inclusive, and productive interactions within groups.
33. Whoa, that's a lot to unpack.
It is. But they're all designed to be really practical and easy to use. You can use them for anything from, decision-making and problem-solving to team building and innovation.
So drawing together is just one of these 33 microstructures.
Exactly. And its power really lies in its simplicity and accessibility. Anyone can do it, regardless of their artistic abilities.
Okay. I'm definitely starting to see the appeal here. We're not bogged down in complex theories or frameworks. We're just letting the drawings speak for themselves. But I'm curious, did your research include any specific examples of how drawing together has been used in the real world?
Oh, absolutely. There are tons of examples out there, but one that really stands out is the story of this doctoral student who was struggling to articulate a really complex concept in their research.
Oh man, I can relate to that. Academia can be a black hole of jargon sometimes.
Right. So this student was stuck in this loop of, jargon and academic language that wasn't resonating with anyone, even other experts in the field.
Yeah, I've been there. It's like you're speaking a different language.
Exactly. So out of frustration, this student decided to try drawing together to see if they could represent their concept visually,
Right.
using those 5 symbols.
So they literally drew a picture of their dissertation.
Well, not exactly. It wasn't about creating a work of art, but about translating those complex ideas into a visual language that anyone could understand.
I like that, make it accessible.
Right. And so they drew a large circle to represent the overall field of study, then a smaller circle inside to represent their specific area of research. They used a spiral to show the evolution of thought on the topic, and then a triangle to represent their unique contribution to the field.
Whoa, so they created a visual roadmap of their research.
Yeah, exactly. And the amazing thing is it worked. When they shared their drawing with their colleagues, suddenly everyone was on the same page.
Wow, that's powerful. It's like the drawing acted as a bridge between the abstract and the concrete.
Precisely. And that's just one example. Drawing together has been used to address all sorts of challenges, from improving team communication to developing innovative products to even resolving conflicts.
Okay, I'm definitely sold on the concept. Now I'm ready to get a little more hands-on. In part 2 of our deep dive, can we dig into those 5 symbols a bit more? I'm feeling inspired to unleash my inner artist.
Absolutely. We'll explore the nuances of each symbol and how you can use them to unlock your own hidden knowledge.
Okay, so I've ditched my usual notebook, and I've got some blank paper and a pack of colored pencils ready to go. I'm feeling kind of artsy, actually. Let's dive into those 5 symbols. Where should we start?
Well, let's start with the circle. The circle is all about wholeness.
Coolness. Okay.
Yeah. When you draw a circle, you're inviting yourself to think about the big picture, the overall context of the challenge you're facing. It's about seeing the interconnectedness of everything, how it all fits together.
So if I'm feeling super overwhelmed by a problem at work, drawing a circle could help me zoom out and see how all the different pieces connect. Maybe even realize it's not as isolated as it feels.
Exactly. And you can
Right.
even play around with the size of the circle. Like imagine drawing a huge circle to represent that feeling
Yeah.
of being overwhelmed, letting it take up a lot of space on the page.
Oh, I like that. It's like you're giving that feeling a physical form.
Exactly. It can help you really visualize the weight of the issue. And then you've got the rectangle. The rectangle represents support.
Support. Okay. So I'm guessing it's not just about having a strong foundation in life, right?
Right. While the rectangle can certainly symbolize those foundational elements,
Yeah.
your support system, your resources, it can also represent the structures or the processes or even the rules that are at play in the situation.
Okay, so if I'm facing a bureaucratic nightmare, I might draw a bunch of rectangles to represent all those roadblocks and hoops I have to jump through, like I'm trapped in a maze of rectangles.
Exactly. It's about bringing those often invisible structures to the forefront, making them tangible on the page.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
And you know what's cool is you can play around with the placement of the symbols too, right? Like if I'm feeling really unsupported in a situation, maybe I draw the rectangle really far away from the other symbols or make it super tiny.
Yeah. Exactly. That's a great instinct. Size and placement can really add layers of meaning to your visual story. A small, distant rectangle could symbolize a lack of support, while a large, bold rectangle right in the center of your drawing, that might represent a really strong foundation or like a powerful ally.
I'm starting to see how much nuance we can pack into these simple shapes. Okay, so what about the triangle? That represents goals, right?
Yep. Think about where you're headed, what you're aiming to achieve.
So like a triangle pointing upwards is like striving for something, reaching for the stars.
Exactly. But a triangle pointing downwards could represent something totally different, like digging deeper, exploring your inner world.
That's interesting. Okay, and then there's the spiral, the symbol of change. I feel like that one could get really creative.
Oh, absolutely. The spiral is all about acknowledging that change isn't linear.
Yeah.
It's messy. It's cyclical, full of twists and turns.
Yeah, life rarely goes in a straight line.
Exactly. And you can play with the size and tightness of the spiral too. A large, expansive spiral might represent a period of like rapid growth and transformation, while a tight, constricted spiral might symbolize feeling stuck or trapped.
Like you can't escape.
Right.
Okay, I'm picturing someone drawing a spiral with a tiny star person trapped inside, unable to break free. That would be the powerful image.
Exactly. Which brings us to our final symbol, the star person. This one's all about relationships, connections,
Yeah.
the human element of the situation.
So it's not just about like our external relationships, but also our relationship with ourselves, right? Like the different parts of ourselves that are showing up in this challenge.
Precisely. You might draw a cluster of star people to represent, a strong team or a supportive community. Or you might draw a solitary star person to represent a feeling of isolation or, a need for connection.
Okay, so we've got these 5 symbols, and we're thinking about their size, their placement, their relationship to each other. But what about color? Can we use color to enhance the drawings too?
Absolutely. Color is where you can really let your intuition take over. Think about the emotions and associations you have with different colors. Like a fiery red spiral might represent a period of intense change, while a calming blue circle might symbolize peace and stability.
Oh yeah, like if I'm drawing a goal that feels super exciting and full of potential, maybe I reach for like a bright, vibrant yellow for my triangle.
Exactly. There's no right or wrong way to use color.
Right.
It's all about adding that extra layer of meaning and emotional resonance to your visual story. And remember, even if you don't consider yourself like an artist, just trust your gut. Don't overthink it and have fun.
This has been really helpful. I'm actually feeling inspired to go grab those colored pencils and just start experimenting. But before I do, can you give us a sneak peek at what's coming up in the final part of our deep dive?
Of course. So we've covered the basics of drawing together and explored the nuances of those 5 powerful symbols. Now, in part 3, we'll take a look at some real-world examples of how this technique has been used to solve problems, spark innovation, and even transform entire organizations.
Okay, I can't wait to see how those scribbles and symbols translate into real-world impact. All right, so I'm ready for those real-world examples. You promised stories of drawing together in action.
Okay, so let's start with a team who was really struggling to find common ground on a new product launch.
Yeah, that's a familiar scenario.
They were stuck in this cycle of endless debates.
Yeah.
Each person championing their own ideas, and it felt like they were just going nowhere.
Yeah, I've been there. It's like everyone's got their own vision and no one's willing to budge.
Exactly. So instead of another round of unproductive brainstorming, they decided to try drawing together.
Okay, so they grabbed their paper-colored pencils, the 5 symbols.
Yeah.
What happened?
One person had drawn a giant circle to represent the market they were trying to reach.
The market, okay.
But inside that circle, they had drawn this tiny little triangle to represent their product.
So like their product was getting lost in this vast market.
Exactly. And another team member had drawn a cluster of star people all surrounding a rectangle.
Representing the team, I'm guessing.
Exactly. Symbolizing the importance of collaboration and support for the launch.
Okay, so even though they were expressing their individual ideas, the drawings were already starting to reveal those shared themes.
Right. And as they continued to share and discuss their drawings, they realized that even though their approaches differed, they all had the same goal.
Which was?
To create a successful product that met the needs of their customers.
So drawing together helped them move beyond those surface level disagreements and like connect on a deeper level.
Exactly. And it helped them make some concrete decisions, too.
Really? Like how?
Well, they were able to identify those key areas where they needed to focus their efforts, like clarifying their target market and strengthening their internal communication,
Okay, so they walked away with an action plan.
and feeling energized and aligned, ready to tackle the challenge as a team.
Okay, that's a great example of how drawing together can help teams find common ground. But you mentioned it can also be a powerful tool for individual reflection, too.
Right. Like imagine a leader who's wrestling with a major career decision,
Ooh, a tough one.
Do they stay in their current role, which is comfortable but maybe not fulfilling? Or take a leap of faith and pursue a new opportunity that's riskier but potentially more rewarding?
Classic dilemma. So how does drawing together come into play here?
Well, this leader decided to use the technique to explore their options visually. They drew a circle to represent their current life with a rectangle inside to represent their job in providing that stability and security.
Okay, makes sense.
But then they drew a spiral leading away from that circle.
Ooh, a path of change.
Exactly, symbolizing a potential path of growth and change. And at the end of that spiral, they drew a triangle to represent that new opportunity.
So they're like visually mapping out their options.
Right, but here's the interesting part. They used a bright, vibrant color for that triangle, but then they added some shadows and darker tones around the edges.
So they're acknowledging the risks too.
Exactly. They're acknowledging both the excitement and the potential downsides. And by engaging with those emotions, through the act of drawing, they gain a deeper understanding of what really matters to them.
Did they end up making a decision?
They did. They decided to take the leap and pursue that new opportunity. But it wasn't just a rational decision, based on logic. It was a decision informed by their intuition, their values, their deepest desires, all of which were brought to the surface through drawing together.
Wow, that's powerful. It's like this technique helps us tap into our inner wisdom.
Exactly. It's not about finding the right answer, but about finding an answer that feels right for you.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of drawing together. Any final thoughts you want to leave our listeners with?
Just remember, it's not about being an artist. It's about embracing the process, trusting your intuition, and allowing those symbols to speak to you.
Yeah, those symbols are like little keys that unlock those hidden parts of ourselves.
Yeah.
All right, folks. So next time you're feeling stuck, grab a pen, grab those 5 symbols, and see where your imagination takes you.
You might just surprise yourself.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into drawing together. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise. See you next time on the Facilitators Deep Dive Podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery. Until next time.
See you then.